Hello, wonderful people. Sean Tucker here, coach, trainer, and the man behind the mic in the brand new podcast, How Are You Really Mum? With the fresh male perspective, this is a place where we will unveil the layers and celebrate the woman behind motherhood. In How Are You Really Mum, we acknowledge the joys, the challenges, the growth, and the tears. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the How Are You Really Mum podcast with me, Sean Tucker, and I'm joined by an awesome lady all the way over from Ohio in the United States today. Her name is Mary Wiegand. Is that how I say that, Mary?
Yeah, you got it right. Wiegand. Yep.
Wiegand. So Mary is actually a businesswoman as well. So she's the CEO of Boon, which is an award-winning consulting agency providing inventory planning support to brands. But on top of that, she's also a mother to 6 kids. Did you hear that? 6 kids. A couple of episodes ago, I introduced a lady who has 5, and 6 is one-upping that. So her journey of building the business while navigating the personal trials that led to her big blended family has been incredibly tough, but of course, incredibly rewarding. She finds ways to thrive in all of the chaos that life has thrown at her. So Mary, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for that intro that gives just a snippet of what life is like over here for me, in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, when we first connected we connected over LinkedIn, and then we had just a networking call, and my goodness, when you said you had 6 kids, I was like, well, I'm a family of, I'm one of 6 kids as well. So
yes,
I resonate on that. But I think when you were saying some of the things like you were starting your business or you doubled down on your business when all the lockdowns, all the COVID stuff was happening. And you're a mom to 6 kids. Like, how does that even work?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell a little of the backstory and just, I think, before I give the details, I think for me, I see my journey as one of many journeys, right? All moms have their journey, and I don't ever want it to be that my journey's harder than others. We all struggle through so many elements of life.
Totally.
And for me, pandemic of 2020 was a turning point and a moment in history that all of us know kind of what was happening to us during that time. And for me, actually, interestingly, I started out the year of 2020. So the start of 2020, I was the mom to 2 kids. Okay, so we only had 2 at that moment. Actually, as the lockdowns happened, I was pregnant with twins at that time. So lockdown happened in mid-March, of course, and I gave birth to identical boys in April. So a few weeks into the pandemic, I delivered twins alone by myself in the hospital, given personal circumstances as well as the global pandemic. And so then quickly became the mom to 3 kids. I like to say I had 3 kids for 7 minutes. And then the fourth came along. So I had those twins, just, few weeks into the pandemic. And all of a sudden then the mom to 4. At that time, also on the personal side, was going through a really hard end of my marriage. So I was married, married to the dad of those 4 kids. And when they were 4 weeks old, so now we're into May of 2020, left that marriage. So became a single mom to the 4 children in a global pandemic. With their ages of the kids at that time was 5 years old, 3 years old, and then the 2 twins that were 4 weeks. So it was... It was a lot. Yes. And that's why I say, but it's not that, my journey, that was a hard moment. And that is something that I had to do the decision. That was the hard decision, which was the better decision for me and my kids at the time, and I had to have strength and confidence in myself and independence to say, yes, I need to make a change out of that personal situation.
Yeah. I'd love to ask, when the pandemic was coming and you knew you were kind of pregnant with twins, what was going on in your mind? Wow, I've got to do this on my own. How is that going to happen?
Yeah, it's interesting 4 years later to look back and think now what I was thinking at the time. But, at least for within the US, we were starting to see the news, and the news specifically was saying, the idea of, shelter at home and stay home because we're trying to stop the spread.
Yeah.
And they needed to hold hospital rooms for people that were going to need, regular routine hospital care. And
Hmm.
I was definitely one of those. So I was sitting in my home thinking, oh my gosh, I need a hospital bed sometime in the next 4 weeks. And because my twins were high risk, I also had to have an operating room. So like I had to deliver in an operating room. They weren't born C-section, but regardless, I still had to be in the operating room. So I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, like this is happening. And I am one of those that's going to have to enter the medical facilities. And I was even going twice a week to have them checked. So I have these memories of feeling like you're in like a sci-fi movie, walking through with, not trying to touch anything, not sure where I'm at, people in different types of masks. And honestly, if we think back to that long ago, the very, very early in the pandemic, we weren't actually all wearing masks. So it
That's
was a
right.
very
Yeah.
weird situation where some were wearing masks in the hospital settings, but it just was very much unknown. So I was nervous, truthfully. I was nervous knowing that more about the global issues or like the macro issues of if I was going to be safe at the hospital. I had had 2 previous children, so I knew that what childbirth was like. I knew it was going to be just as terrible as it was. But it was more about like the uncertainty of what it was going to be like in just that unknown of like what was happening within the medical field and doing it alone. So yeah, I was dropped off at the hospital in order to deliver them solo with a backpack on my back of stuff for me and a bag over my shoulder of stuff for the twins after they were delivered.
Yeah.
And honestly, even the nurses weren't able to come in as much as they would want, right? They were still kind of trying to be in that quarantine type, only touching patients as they needed to. So I was alone for lots of hours, just all alone in the hospital bed. Yeah.
Yeah. What was going on through your mind at those moments? Like, obviously, there's so much unknown. Was there a lot of
Hmm.
like doubt and fear, or was it kind of like whatever happens, happens?
It was a little bit more of, I would say from a mom's perspective, it was like, I have
Yeah.
to do this. Like, I
Yeah.
have to do this in order to bring these children into the world. So it was like a
Hmm.
strength that sort of put blinders on as like a horse in a race. Like, I can't think about anything else. I just have to make this happen. So it's more in the retrospective looking back that I kind of have more of those feelings like, whoa, that was hard. That was a crazy situation. But in the moment, you just had to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
It was
yeah, I
just very
didn't.
decisive, right?
Mhm.
It was a just this decision that you had to stick to,
Yep, yep. I mean, I
getting
did
these kids out.
getting the kids out. I think there was a moment I told the nurses, "I don't wanna do this," and they
Yeah.
have no response to that. The response is, "Well, sorry, we gotta get them out." So,
You
um,
should have thought about that a while back.
yeah, that decision had been made quite a few months prior. But I take it as a huge, I think every mom, however you bring your child into the world, naturally adoption. Obviously, we'll talk about my other 2 kids that came into my life, but however you become a mom, it takes strength
Yeah.
and it takes that resilience. And so I think it's just a motivating factor for me that like I did that. It's like a warrior type moment in my journey of motherhood for sure.
Yeah. The mother
Yeah.
warrior.
Yeah.
I love that. And,
Yeah.
I've spoke about it on the previous episodes as well, but the responsibility you take on as a parent, let alone a mum, right? Like
Yeah.
you're literally in charge or like handling that life. That life is 100% in your hands. That's first
Hmm.
and foremost. And that's just been the case. But we live in a time now where it's not necessary to reproduce, right? It's not necessary to bring another child into the world right now because there is so much
Hmm.
human
Hmm.
population.
Hmm.
So we do have a choice around that.
Hmm.
But it is actually a huge responsibility when you make that conscious. Like
Hmm.
you're developing and growing the next generation of humans to live on this
Yes.
planet.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That like just gave me chills up my arm because yeah, so I have 6 kids, right? And so we've talked about the 4
Yeah.
and the 2 that came into my life are my stepchildren. And so after leaving that marriage, right, 4 years ago, I've now got an amazing relationship with a partner who has 2 kids of his own. So that's how we got to 6.
Yeah.
And to your point, yeah, I have a blended family of 6 and it's a lot of kids. Some people I do get discussions and talks about people like, wow, to mom to 6. And how did you make that decision? And clearly I didn't make the decision to reproduce 6 times, but now I
Hmm.
am responsible. And I feel what you just said, right? I am responsible for the lives of 6 humans on this earth. And the
Yeah.
thing that I wake up every day is to try to make them be the best humans they can be and to give back more than they take to this world. Like that's just what I
Yeah.
really, really try to do every single day.
That's such a key mindset, I believe, for any parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is what you just said there. But secondly, and I think this goes to show how committed you are to that. And I think why I really wanted to get you on this podcast as well is because you lead a business that is kind of thriving, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
thriving quite well over
Mm-hmm.
where you are. During all these challenges, you were still masterfully crafting your business.
That's true. Yes. Yes. So,
So I'd love to know why, really, like that. That
sure.
to me sounds like you're really taking on that responsibility
Mm-hmm.
seriously. It's like I want to
Mm-hmm.
be leading these children with, I don't know,
Yeah, I
what
do.
is
I
it?
want to lead them by an example that shows that I can give back more than I take. And I do that in
Yeah,
multiple ways. I do that through so much of, what I would call the core parenting time with them and developing them as humans, but them being able to see me in my work environment
yeah,
is huge, as well as what I'm truly then able to give back to the world through my work. Right. And so I think you mentioned it in the bio, but my work, I'm the CEO of Boon. We are the inventory consultant agency. So what we are actually doing is working with brands to help make sure they have their demand plans in place so that they know how much they're going to sell, so we can help manage their inventory plans and make sure they're not overstocked, out of stock, essentially playing a lot in spreadsheets to make sure they have the right product at the right time and the right amount. Okay.
yeah.
I
Yep.
learned all this from like corporate retail. Prior to Boon, I worked at very large corporations here in the United States, Target Corp, Victoria's Secret, Tiffany and Company, learned from the best, but then started to work in the smaller brands.
Mm,
And at its core, what I just described isn't changing the world, right? We're just bringing product to market and we're making sure that you as a consumer can buy what you want to see on the site or in the store. But from Boon's perspective, we're taking a different approach. And I started Boon after having my daughter. So I was the mom to two of those kids
yeah,
pre-pandemic and was working the corporate retail world and just couldn't find the right blend. And I use the word blend instead of balance because I don't believe you can ever find a perfect balance. It's not that 50% and 50%, whether we're talking in a relationship or my work versus my family life. Like, we're sitting here doing this interview at a time that I've had to manage around my family, but that's okay. We blend it back together.
yeah,
So I couldn't figure out how to blend my corporate life to my family life. So I started Boon, thinking I could use the skills I'd gained through these large corporate jobs to help brands that otherwise wouldn't have access to this type of functional expertise. Small brands that are just starting out. Many of the brands that I support are female founded, mission based, real kind of bringing new products to market that wouldn't necessarily be able to find a resource to support their inventory planning in this way.
yeah.
And
That's
also my
huge.
team. Yeah, I mean it's huge, and it also still that part you're like, okay, I'm still helping bring product to market. But
Mm,
what Boon has built is a team of primarily females who come from a similar background as me with corporate experience, but who don't want to do the corporate grind. They don't want to sit at their desk 8 to 5 every single day and be forced to kind of like sell their soul to that one brand. So Boon has built an amazing dream team of consultants who
mm.
are, again, primarily women and all work part-time. So we're bringing high level of skills, but they're not required to do that same corporate level of commitment, right? They're working for Boon between 12 and 30 hours a week, which is at
Yeah,
least in the United States for sure, like unheard of. And in the
that is,
retail environment,
from what I
like
understand, yes.
very unheard of. So I'm giving back in a way, like I'm giving back to the brands that we support that are able to get this expertise at a fractional way, right? They're not having to invest in a full-time employee. And I'm giving back to my team in a way that allows them to use the skills that they've had. Many of the people on my team may otherwise be out of the workforce because they would be choosing to be moms and not going into the corporate world. So this is giving
Yeah,
them the blend. And all to say, then it's for all of our children and all of the community. We're giving back more than we're taking. We're finding ways to really make impact, even though our expertise, right, in inventory planning
hmm,
isn't that much of like making a social world impact. But in other ways, we're trying to really showcase that
yeah.
giving.
But also that sense of if you I think in many cases, a lot of these retail companies, if they have too much stock, that's also often the reason why they go out of business, because the idea is great,
Mm-hmm.
but the market is either not ready or it's not
Mm-hmm.
the right market, right? Or it's not
Mm-hmm.
the right product for that market.
Mm-hmm.
And that's eventually
Yeah.
why they go broke and
Yeah.
their business dies.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen everything from exactly what you just described to the almost the opposite, where they have a viral moment and they sell out, but they
Mm,
cannot figure out how to get back in stock in the appropriate way with the appropriate strategy that allows their customers to stay loyal to them, right? A lot of times the
yeah.
customer may find a competitor and then they're not able to sustain the business. And we can talk about sustainability too, a little bit. If we do our jobs right at Boon and we help them
Yeah.
stay in stock, but not overstocked, we can do our small part to reduce the amount of waste that's happening between overproduced goods and inventory that's not needed, but it's being sent through a factory and on a ship and over here and then eventually to a landfill when we didn't actually need it. So there is that element of like global
100%.
impact
Yeah.
that we're trying to navigate
Yeah.
a
And
little
I
bit
see
too.
that. I mean, when we first connected, I certainly, I grasped that, yeah, it is a very an
Hmm.
environmentally sustainable way of managing inventory, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because how much inventory doesn't actually make it to the consumer?
Right. Right.
I'm sure there's some stats out there that say how much that is. Like there's probably massive amounts of percentage,
There's
even from the
massive
big
amounts.
companies.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the big companies actually are bigger because 1 or 5% on a Target, Walmart order is a lot more than any of the brands I'm dealing with. And yes,
Yes,
in
of course.
fashion, beauty, like those two categories within the consumer goods have a lot of waste, if you want to call. I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but yes, like there's
Yeah,
overproduction of inventory across that. And I understand being in the industry that I'm in, it's hard to get it right. You want to make sure you have the right color, the right size. You don't want to miss seasonal curves, right? If you're out of stock of the raincoats in the rainy season, you're not going to sell them, or snow gear in the snow time, swimsuits.
yeah,
So you have to get it right. And I also tell clients from Boon's perspective, we're not fortune tellers. We don't know the answer. We just help make smarter decisions with as many of the inputs as we can.
yeah. You're trying to make predictable outcomes,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
problem with that is you're dealing with people.
Yeah. Right. You're dealing with, I mean, you're dealing with the entire world. You're dealing with people, you're dealing
Yeah,
with marketing, you're dealing with like impacts of macroeconomic trends that are changing, supply chain issues. Like there's no way you could get it exact, but we're trying
yeah.
to support little improvements.
Yeah, but I do love what you've sort of created, because it takes a lot of wisdom, but clearly there's something that drives you, right?
Yeah.
There's really that family element that you care so deeply for. I mean, that's probably the reason you wanted to create a team, a dream team,
Mm-hmm.
where the flexibility is almost the core of your business.
It is.
Like, would you say that family is your highest value? Is that sort of what brings you to wake up every single morning, or is it more the giving aspect? Like what is it for you, Mary?
I think in a way it is almost a little bit more of the giving aspect, and that's how I
Yeah.
can see it through when I go to work every morning. I feel like I'm giving there, and I know that that's giving to my family as well, but I think and I know that I'm bringing that it's positive impact on the children that I'm raising to see me
Yeah.
work this way. But I think what really does motivate me is that like to make an impact on this world and again leave more than I take. It transcends to me the family. It's higher level than that. The family is one very high element that allows me to do that, but work is another
Yeah.
way too. Yeah.
Yeah. I really do love that. And it's setting such a great example, not just for you and your family, but it's incorporating the community, right? Your local
Mhm.
community, and then
Mhm.
the impact of the businesses that you work on in their community,
Yep.
and then globally as well, right? Like
Yeah.
that's such a important keystone, I think, that many
Mhm.
people sort of maybe just brush over, but really it comes back to probably the things that you really care deeply for.
Mhm.
Your business becomes your little baby, and
Exactly. Exactly.
that's the expression of your inner core.
Yes. Yes. And I think you mentioned it when we first, started the interview is, I had to build this business as the pandemic was raging too. And I owned the
Yeah.
business. I started it in 2017. So I had it going before, but with the pandemic and, the personal side of that and the story of the twins and going through the divorce and then being on my own, I really had to use that moment to figure out how to sustain me and my family. So I did, it is my baby. I have two twins and a business that somewhat have a birthday around the same time. The business is older, but
Hmm.
there's an inflection point that happened at that same moment that allowed me to really push hard in a way that I wasn't doing in the business before, that by necessity, but also I allowed me to find that passion, to find I was really getting up and doing this and not just making it a hobby to push buttons.
Yeah.
And inventory planning too can be very robotic. It's very much like the systematic repetition of certain processes to do. But it was for me in that moment, like, wait, I got to do something different. I got to make this work for me and my family initially. And then I started to get that overarching, like, wait, I'm giving back more than I'm taking here. And I've been through some hard things
Yeah.
and raising 6 kids and got a huge business and a whole big dream team. But it was at that kind of moment. It's my baby right along with the twins.
Yeah. How much of that, I mean, when you're going through it, I think it's hard to make it really conscious, right? Sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
kind of just do without
Yep.
really making it really felt, if that kind of makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
often it's because our bodies and minds are processing it.
Yes. Yes. I feel that now, 4 years later, I can look back and say, for those first 2 years after, the twins were born from 0 to 2, I was in sort of this like adrenaline rush moment that I was just executing and I knew what I had to
Mm.
do and I was moving and I was going and every day and it was hard. I was feeling emotions every day still. Like I was breaking down at times. I was reaching out for help more than I ever have. I'm a super independent human since I was a baby,
Yeah.
but I needed help at that point. I was like, oh, I have to find my community too. But I was going through, I had like a grit and a drive that just biologically, I think, came to me in that with everything that was going on in the world and in my business and in my personal life. And it
Mm.
drove me for like 2 years. And I also remember, and I don't know, as much biologically, maybe you know a little bit, but like I remember kind of the fall, like I came out of it and
Yeah.
it almost scared me to not have, I could feel almost, it wasn't immediate. Like I woke up one day and it was gone. I could feel this like drainage of the adrenaline rush as I got in my new relationship. My business did start to work. I really started to feel a little more settled and it took that adrenaline off, almost like a trauma victim who then is relaxed. And you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
wait, that now I start to feel it. Now I felt more pain because I had just been executing so hard for like 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes, I think the word you used earlier was necessity,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was an absolute necessity to do what you were doing. Because if you didn't, well, your business wouldn't be where it would be today,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was a time where there was a bit of a flux, almost like a limbo period of like, oh, wow, this is working. Oh, wow, this is like good stress in a way. Like the adrenaline is a stress hormone, right? Same with cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Only adrenaline is something you feel. So when you wake up in the morning, it can be kick you in straight into gear. It's like when that baby cries, a newborn baby, it's usually adrenaline that kicks into the mum
Ah.
that says, go and look after your kid. Go and take care of that thing because it's crying and it needs your help right now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kind of, I use the word surrender here, when you're surrendered into, let's say, more your core purpose, your core reason for being here, like your life path I'm kind of talking about.
Mm-hmm.
When you kind of just let it happen, you just have to wake up and move. That's as simple as it is. And it sounds like that's what it was for you. Of course, there was still the things that were happening. Like you were on that roller coaster. If you're not feeling the roller coaster, there's something tremendously wrong with you. Right?
Sure. Yeah. 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 No, like there was lots of, I mean, there still might be something wrong with me, but there was lots of tears and feelings and emotions and
But that's
struggles
momentum as
and
well, right?
positive. Yeah. And trying to celebrate, finding the moments of like, I doing this and building upon what I'd done the day before or the week before and milestones as again, I'm raising two twins at this point. So every time they're a new month old, I'm getting to a next stage with them too.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess when the mind and the body, they kind of slow down the processing. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like, all right, that stressful period is kind of over. This is where, you hop off some sort of roller coaster or some ride and your stomach's still like going around in circles. You're like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
It's because the inertial force is still within you, right? So the inertia, it just keeps going until you kind of allow it to stop. Because when you're on a train, a moving train, and it stops, or when you're in a car crash, the whole reason you get injured is because of inertia. So if you're, this is actually the problem of high performers, what we're talking about here, because they get so much momentum, they're so focused and laser focused on just doing, that they don't allow the being process to happen as much. So they're not present with what's happening inside of them. And they can be completely unaware that they've just had a heart attack.
I've heard
Right?
of that.
Yeah.
It's
It is,
crazy.
it's nuts.
But I can almost feel it. Like I'm sitting here, my brain is a little bit like, oh man, panicking, because that is something that I think I'm actively working on, is like figuring out how to release, how to let go, even if it's for certain hours of the day, because I am, even today, you know, past the most adrenaline portions of this current journey that I'm on, at least, I still struggle to truly relax. And it's something I'm like, I know it's just me as a high performer, if that's what we call it. Like I just am always looking to do, and half the time I'm doing two things at once, right? Whether it's double things in business or kids and business, or double kids or triple kids. Yeah, that's crazy that you're
Overly
I feel
ambitious
it.
in
Yeah.
many ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not wrong, right? This is the thing. We live in a world that is almost just constantly trying to grab your attention. Constantly. So our bodies and minds can't really process all that's happening right now. Like we have levels of our mind that's constantly recording. Like there's nothing wrong with the recorder. It's constantly going. But the problem is our recall. So when you feel a little bit tired, you notice that your recall starts to become a little bit slower. It starts to really slow down, and you stop like, how did I even get here? Those kind of moments where you drive somewhere, it's like, well, I don't even know how this happened, right? Because you're moving so quickly and the world is moving so quickly. But our physiology, our brains as well, they haven't learned to, in that kind of level of momentum. So we have to first upgrade ourselves, right? So what I mean by that is we have done a lot of outworld or outside engineering. We've done so much engineering to the world. We use technology. We're the most comfortable society that has ever lived on this. We are so blessed, but we're also so cursed at the same time, because there's such a huge mental load that we're taking on now, because we haven't learned to handle our own systems. So what you're saying is, you know, being intense, there's nothing wrong with that. But being intense when you're relaxed, that is a skill that I think many people actually need now. They need it. They need to learn how to adopt that, because their bodies and their brains can't keep up at that same pace. So I love the way that you said blending, you know, because once you blend the outside world with the inside world, that's when you really allow yourself to thrive and be intense, but also relax.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you start building up some of these hormones like adrenaline, cortisol, is your sleep suffers. You might still be able to get like 8 hours sleep, let's just say. You might be able to get 6 hours sleep, or you might be able to get 4 hours of quality rest, right? And there's a huge difference. That's why there's no one number that's said to be like, this is how much sleep you need, because it's actually dependent on that individual and how well they can be at rest. And I think a really key message that I would love to promote, even just on this episode as well, is, can you be rested while still being intense? Like as a mum, when that kid starts crying as a newborn, it's just instantly. But how much of that can you make conscious? When you make it conscious, first you need awareness, right? And then just let that awareness grow so that you can know the baby's crying. You can actually start to hear the subtleties of, are they crying because they're uncomfortable? Are they crying because they're hungry? Are they crying because they've just pooed themselves? Like, you know, there's those real subtle cries. But when we're not paying attention or we're not present, we actually miss out on these aspects, because life is always going. but our minds are just racing faster than, and I think that is a real problem.
100%. I think everything you just said, I'm sitting here nodding and feeling, because I think I live it every day, of like intensity, but relaxation and blending and being present. I mean, those are things that I am today in my journey cognitive of all of that, and trying to figure all of those out as a mom and as a business leader and as just a human in society. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, and now there's such a big push. Like I've noticed in the last few years, you probably know of Wim Hof, that the Iceman breathing techniques and doing all these cold plunges and saunas and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right? Like they're all still band-aids, they're all still little
Yeah.
pills, because it will settle your system. But unless you make that a practice that you can do every single day, and you're bringing that level of awareness and attention to each moment as a practice, almost useless, because you're combating the symptom,
Yeah.
not the cause.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think for moms, it's really hard with all the pressures of the children and society. And I think just trying to, again, blend and never balance. I think that's for me what's hard, is the mentally, what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do, in quotes? What am I supposed to be feeling right now? What's the guilt of mom that I'm not doing certain things? And I just know that for me, I can't be balanced. That's a level of like burden that I don't carry, because I cannot balance it. And
Yeah.
so I think there's that, like, how do you get it in your life so that it just blends and that ribbon runs through, so you can find the moments that are relaxed but intense and aware. And it's
Yeah.
not easy.
There's actually something that I've noticed over the last couple of years of just talking to mums as well, is they sometimes struggle with the number of hats that they wear, right? So it's almost like that identity shift of, I'm the mum, I'm the coach, I'm the CEO, but I'm also this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
the wife,
Yes. Yes.
et cetera,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think what you said there is blending. And I like to think of being hybridizing. It's like being a hybrid role, having a hybrid role, because as a being, you're not a male or a female, right? As a human, you are. But as a being, there's no identity. It's just this constant, almost metamorphosis that happens. And that needs that level of presence, or just awareness in that present moment. And that's ultimately what we're trying to tap into, I think, just as a human being. But I think if mums are so much better than dads, just FYI. They have that ability to just, okay, be aware, let go, be aware, let go, action, and just continue, like just move, essentially.
Yeah, I think, any of us moms just move. And I think the struggle that I'll just say there for any moms out there listening is to be the hybrid is an amazing analogy. I think many of us, though, instead of hybrid, we want to be all things of all the hats. And that's where you have to understand that blend has to be, I can't be 110% of every one of those hats that were listed on every single day. And I say this in other of my business podcasts, like, I know that I can't give my business 110 and my kids 110% in the same section of hours. That's just not possible. And it's taken me a long time to understand that. And so I think, just to layer onto your hybrid, it's like you have to understand what percentage is coming from where, and it's not all going to be even. Don't think that you're going to just be 80% of a really good friend and 90% a good wife and 100% a good mom and 70% a good business owner or employee. It all varies, honestly, probably by the hour, but if we want to say, by half of days, if you want, or by the day. It's just about, understanding that, because I still carry guilt when I feel like I wanted it to be 100% mom day and it just didn't happen that way. So I had to readjust, and I'll hopefully try to, quote unquote, even here saying it, like, make up that mom time a different day, because I feel like guilt to the kids.
Well, I would probably even go as far to say is a moment to moment level, right? Because
Sure.
really, I mean, this is just through a conversation that I've had recently with another mum who's been on the podcast in the last few weeks, is I was trying to be focused on growing my business whilst being the carer for my 4.5-month-old, right? you simply cannot do two things at once, right? You can't bring 100% focus to that child and be present with your business and what's happening in your mind when it comes to your business. Sure, you can put your kid on the floor and give them some toys and be like, yeah, you take care of yourself, right? But is that really being the caretaker, or is that kind of just like I wouldn't say the babysitter, or is that just kind of being negligent, right? How much, and I think you have probably mastered this, Mary, is when you've gone through these stages of you had two kids, then you had twins, your business literally boomed. It's like, how much in those moments were you thinking about, or maybe it's to do with maybe structuring your day? Like, how do you change those hats or change those roles to where maybe it can't be a whole day of being, 100% the mum, but it's like you got to learn to put out fires? Or does it just come from that moment to moment awareness of, this is where my attention's now? And the next moment it's got to be on the kid.
You're right. I mean, it is moment to moment. I think for me, because I live and breathe, my core function is in spreadsheets. My mind is a mathematical one. Thinking about moment to moment almost feels heavier than I need it to be. So I tend to because that's like, oh my gosh, I would calculate how many changes I could have in the day. But you're right. Like I live in less structure than people may think when you hear that I have 6 children and I run a very large business. I live within that flexible realm that Boon creates for everybody that works for Boon, as well as like works best for my family. When I get up in the day, yes, I have a perception of what my day might be like, but I may have to change it on a dime if a kid vomits, if I get a call from a school, if I expect to be doing something with the kid and I get a client call that's causing me to turn on a dime, and or just, I mean, normal stuff. Those are all a little bit more of like the things we all think about when our days change as a mom, but things can change, yes, in a moment. And I have to somewhat adapt and ask for help as needed. And kind of just, for me, it often like I reshuffle the whole deck, if you will. Like I think, okay, now what happened and what's going to come after, almost like a reprioritization, relook at least the rest of the day. And still trying to put the focus on back to, am I giving back more than I'm taking? Am I making sure that I'm being a good human myself and raising good humans? And I think that helps too. If you have that grounding of, what am I trying to do here? Why did I wake up today? That can help navigate a lot of those changes that come in the moments.
Yeah. And I think you said something really key, and maybe an adopted mindset that I can even take on is like reshuffling your cards. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
Because we all have a hand of cards that maybe the day's given us, or even life has just given us, right? And so sometimes when we just shuffle them in our own hand, then we actually see that we have numbers that we didn't see before. Or we see some of the cards that are like
pattern.
Yeah, we can see how to play the game differently.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And that is really such a huge tool that we can adopt in that moment, right? Because how much of that guilt sometimes plays out when you're caught up in what's happening in the business right now. You get that call from school that says, your child, or maybe it's childcare or whatever is going on, your child's sick, you got to come and take them home, right? How much of that, let's say, emotion gets caught in the business of what you're doing, and then it's pulled out and then dragged to where you need to go pick up your child. Right. I think a lot of the problem we have is we get caught here. We're a little bit sticky. We're a little bit sappy. We're stuck to that tree that's like holding us within our business. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's with our children, and we're pulled somewhere else. It's like, is it your ability to just let it go? How have you learned to, really adopt it?
I think it comes with an understanding that I am not in control of so much, right? I think we mentioned it earlier. Like, you have to just kind of be aware and know that things can change. And I think when I let the mental side of that go, that I'm not going to be able to be in control, I'm not going to be able to sit down at my desk from 8 to 5 and get my job done. It's just not even the starting of that perception.
Yeah.
It allows me to be flexible. And you're right, like I do sort of compartmentalize, and I am sort of thinking of that deck of cards, and I'm moving them around, and I'm putting two in one place, and I'm reorganizing the pairs, and I'm putting things to tomorrow, and I'm bringing things from tomorrow in. I will say I try to maximize as much of my day as I can. So I try not, and that goes back to like the intensity side. So I'm thinking about like, wait, okay, I was going to do this tomorrow, but now I have kids home because someone got called home from school. So I'm going to shift things around. And I just try to relax about it. And
Mm-hmm.
my sleep I don't sleep as much as I should. So like sometimes, that does come into it, like where it's a late night, it's a very early morning. But I think it's knowing every single day that I'm not in control of what's going to happen. I have to just kind of let it go. And it doesn't mean too, I think as a mom, when you get that call from daycare and it says, you have to bring the kid home, every mom wants to be the one who goes and gets that kid. But it doesn't always have to be that either. Sometimes I'm reshuffling the deck and I'm thinking, wait, I have this other thing. I can ask my partner to get the child. He's got this things going on. That's okay. I don't have to be the 100% mom at this time. I can ask for help. I can ask my parents who don't live local. They could come in and help support when I have a big situation that I need additional hands on deck for the kids. Don't think that I have to do it all. I think a lot of times I've heard you say things about moms, and we do carry a lot, and we are capable of a lot, but that can feel as if we have to do a lot. And sometimes you need to use your resources too, your community.
Do you think maybe, Mary, that's where the mum guilt comes from? We often see outside of us, or obviously I'm not a mum, but I still take on that embodiment that I am a mother to the world. Like if I can leave some part of life, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, whether it's a person, a little bit better than the way that I found them, right? If I'm able to contribute something that makes them feel better, then that's me being a mother to the world. And oftentimes when we feel like, or we see people outside of us looking as if they're handling it all, look as if they're managing 100%.
Yes.
Right? Because they have a good game face, right?
Yes.
Is this where that mum guilt comes from, do you think?
It's hard. And I think yes and no. In the world we live in today, 2024, social media, technology, we're seeing the best of so many people, the best of their lives, right? Like we are seeing only the highlight reels. And I think that's causing everyone to think that like that's all, everything of them is their highlight reel. And I think there's also a lot of push, even for myself, we are seeing a lot of people celebrate. And in the female world, we're seeing this, like rise of female entrepreneurs, female CEOs, trying to find other ways that we're breaking barriers that haven't been broken before. And that can bring burden too. So I think that's a part of it, but I think it's like innate biologically too, like the other side of the discussion too. So it's like kind of we're getting the worst out of two sides of it right now.
And I guess it's just weighing up the cost as well, right? Because if we see that someone is handling it better than we are, we become like it's a competition. But it's not really.
It's not. It's not. And if you go back to what I said at the very start of this podcast before I really uttered one word about it, I said, this is my journey. I do not compare it to anyone else's. I do not believe that it is harder than anyone else's. And I do not believe that I have it all figured out. And I have given the perception, if people look at my LinkedIn resume and they see, other social media things that I've put out, yes, I also am giving a lot of highlight reels, but I try to be genuine and I try to bring the fact that, no, I'm not perfect. I don't do everything correct. I struggle. I have emotions. I break down. I ask for help because I had seen that people were seeing me as this like, whoa, you are the ultimate warrior who did it all. I'm like, no. Yeah, I had some warrior moments, but I also am a human. I think it's important to bring that element of the story out too for moms to feel connected to somebody else who looks like they have it all together, but they don't. And you don't need to compare to them either.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to your willingness to ask for help and be open to asking for help, because that's, I feel like, has been a theme of this episode and getting to know you through this conversation a bit more, is that when things are going sideways, when maybe things are going really well, when they're going up or going down, it's okay. And it's actually fantastic to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have to handle it all yourself.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's that saying of it takes a village to raise a child,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what does
Yeah.
that really mean? Well, it takes more than just you and dad, for
Mm-hmm.
example, to raise the child, or to raise the children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's huge. Just
Yeah.
being willing to ask for help, because so many of us are trying to prove that we don't need help. Yeah.
Yeah. Be vulnerable. It brings you into that community more than you think. Like just opening up, it's hard, but if you ask for help, if you show that need, people want to help too. You know, I think it's going to be a two-way street. Ask and you will see that it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's
Yeah.
something I'd love to ask just before we finish up today's episode, Mary, and that's looking back at your journey. What has been maybe the thing reflecting back now is the thing that you could say to connect the dots between all of the challenges, all of the obstacles, or like a word or a sentence, just to kind of summarize yourself and your ability to be willing to kind of surrender to that, I don't know, that power within the human spirit, I suppose.
Yeah. That's a heavy question, and asking to boil it down.
It's because you're
I
ready.
I think, you know, if I have to get it in something very succinct, I think you have to believe in yourself at the core of it, right? There's a belief in who you are as an individual, and then insert any number of, you know, the hybrid roles we've talked about. Like you have to believe in yourself. And we all get in situations that outside forces are controlling, where you don't feel like you're able to believe in yourself. So I think the connectivity through all of it is like, just believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because I think believing in yourself, it's wonderful, right? Believe in yourself and your connection to others.
Yes. You don't do it alone. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the point. I think because that theme has come through so many times in this episode, is that you built a dream team. You didn't do that alone, did you?
Nope, definitely not.
And it takes so much level of awareness and skill. You need to know who you are, know your capabilities, know that you're limited, because you really can't do it alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I really love that. So,
Yeah.
Mary, I'm so grateful that we connected, and I'm so grateful that you said yes when I asked you to be on this podcast.
Yes.
Because I think you've shared so much wisdom, and just through your own life experiences, through your professional experience as well, it's just been so awesome to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful and enlightening conversation for me as well. I feel like I've grown a lot even through this.
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful to hear. And if anyone wants to connect with you, Mary, what's the best way to do that?
Certainly, from a professional side, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure we can link in the show notes if you want, but Mary Wiegand on LinkedIn. Also, you can find Boon at boonllc.net if you want to check out the business, and the dream team is shown there. Boon also is on Instagram if you want to find us at Boon LLC on Instagram, or my personal Instagram is Mary_momentary on Instagram if you want to see the fun of the 6 kids.
Awesome. Yeah. And you need to connect with this inspiring lady. So please do connect with Mary. And
Thanks
thank
so
you all
much.
for showing up, listening in, and viewing this podcast. We can't wait to see you guys in the next one. If you want to hear back from Mary in another podcast, please let us know in the comments, and remember to give us a 5-star rating where you can, because that helps us promote the show, and it also allows us to bring on guests that maybe you would love to hear from as well. So thank you so much. See you next time.